Okay, let's get into this. Imagine a world where, special abilities are real. Not like comics, but hidden, subtle.
Right. Existing just beneath the surface.
Exactly. And what if there's this organization out there actively looking for these people, not to help them necessarily, but for their own kind of shadowy reasons?
That's what we're looking at today, isn't it? This group, the Silhouette.
Yeah, the Silhouette. Today on the Deep Dive, we're really digging into how they operate, specifically how they find people with these gifts. Our sources mention stuff like Project Gateway, the Oracle Division, even darker things like an orphanage acquisition program, Project Ghostskin, Project Hollow.
It's quite a list.
Yeah.
It suggests they believe talent isn't just, born, it can be found, maybe even shaped.
Or exploited. We're going to try and piece together how they identify these individuals, where they end up inside the Silhouette structure, and maybe even why they think doing this is okay.
It's fascinating, the scale of it. It's not random. They've built systems, actual programs to locate, categorize, and then use people with these supernatural traits.
So our mission today, understand that whole pipeline. How do they spot potential? What kind of jobs are these people trained for? And yeah, the big one, how do they justify it all?
Let's start where they often start, with kids.
Right. Project Gateway, Gate Gifted and Talented Education. Sounds normal, right? Like an advanced program for smart kids.
On the surface, totally, a standard enrichment program. But the sources paint a different picture. Underneath, it was a recruitment tool.
A filter, basically, designed to secretly find kids with supernatural potential, latent or already showing.
Exactly. And the way they did it was honestly kind of clever in a really disturbing way. They disguised paranormal tests as normal school exercises.
Oh, so what kind of tests are we talking about?
Okay, so like the Zener card test, shapes, guessing, usually about pattern recognition. Well, they apparently tweaked it subtly, used it to spot kids who might have clairvoyance or maybe some telepathic ability.
Wow. Sneaky. What else?
There was something called the Whisper of the Void. Basically, playing recordings that were technically inaudible, but someone with psychic perception might pick them up.
Okay, that's creepy.
And the phantom limb experiment. Sounds weird, but it was about asking kids to describe what was inside a locked box they couldn't see, a test for remote viewing, maybe even seeing bits of the future.
It's wild how they embedded this stuff. Were there others?
Oh, yeah. The color of emotion surfaces that reacted to energy, supposedly to find empaths. The lost time puzzle, looking for kids who noticed weird time slips or memory gaps, hinting at temporal awareness.
Even dream journals.
They looked for recurring symbols, maybe signs of precognitive dreams. It was comprehensive. They weren't just looking for one type of gift.
And it wasn't just the tests in the school environment, was it? They looked at family history, too.
Absolutely. They understood these things might run in families. So they tracked bloodlines, flagged certain surnames known to have histories, monitored birth records that seemed unusual, even kept an eye on orphanages.
Why orphanages specifically?
Less oversight, maybe. Easier to observe or even intervene if a child showed potential without as many questions being asked. It shows this wasn't just a short-term project. They were playing the long game.
Okay, so they run these kids through GATE, identify potential.
Yeah.
Then what? How do they decide what to do with them?
Well, the sources talk about a categorization system. 3 levels.
Right. Category 1.
Those were the latent gifted kids who showed some signs, some potential, but nothing definite yet. They'd just be monitored, watched from a distance, maybe approached years later if something manifested.
Okay. And Category 2.
Active gifted. These kids showed clear, undeniable abilities during the testing. They were the prime targets. Secretly recruited, moved into Silhouette training programs, maybe special schools run by the organization.
And Category 3 sounds ominous.
Yeah.
Dangerous gifted.
Yeah. These were kids whose powers were seen as unstable, maybe too strong, too unpredictable. Their path was less clear. Could be containment, study, sometimes memory wipes and release back into the world, but still under watch. Very unsettling.
Definitely unsettling. Thinking about these kids just being sorted like that. So GATE eventually got shut down publicly, right? But that wasn't the end of it.
Not at all. More like a strategic shift. The methods just got quieter, more refined. They moved towards using private schools and maybe charter schools, and definitely started leveraging data analysis more heavily.
And this is where the oracles come in more strongly.
Exactly. The Oracle Division. Their whole job is psychic detection and surveillance. They likely took over the ongoing search, identifying people whose abilities pop up later in life, making sure they're either recruited, contained, or dealt with if they're deemed a threat.
So the oracles are like The silhouettes, psychic spies, and talent scouts rolled into one. How does that division even work? Are they all the same?
No, there's a hierarchy based on ability, apparently. You start as Sears trainees, basically. They go through intense conditioning, sensory deprivation, maybe even drugs to boost psychic potential.
Intense. Then what?
Above them, the Watchers. These are the field agents. Good at remote viewing, seeing past events, maybe some limited mind reading. They're the ones out there embedding themselves, looking for targets.
Okay, boots on the ground, psychically speaking.
Sort of, yeah. Then you have the augurs. They're more like analysts, strategists. They use precognition to look at future probabilities, advise the leadership. What are the threats? What are the opportunities?
And the top level, the oracles themselves.
The true oracles. These are the heavy hitters. Deep clairvoyance, maybe even influencing probability itself. Apparently, they become quite detached, very powerful. Key advisors.
Influencing probability. That's huge. What other kinds of things can they do?
Well, the whole range. Remote viewing, astral projection, precognition, postcognition, seeing echoes of the past, thought reading, mental intrusion, and importantly, psi shielding, protecting themselves and maybe others from psychic intrusion.
So they're crucial for everything: surveillance, finding recruits, fighting other psychics, maybe even trying to steer events.
Pretty much. They decide who to watch, who to grab, who to neutralize. They're trying to manage risk and maximize the silhouette's advantage using psychic means. But it comes at a cost.
What kind of cost?
The sources mention it takes a huge toll. Mentally, emotionally, burnout, insanity, even something called purging for those who become too unstable or compromised.
Grim. And there's mention of something called the Delphi VATs.
Ah, yes. The VATs seem to be technology used to enhance or amplify psychic abilities, some kind of psi-reactive liquid sensory input-output systems used for really deep dives into the future, complex probability analysis.
Sounds dangerous.
Extremely. Side effects are severe. Delphi syndrome, temporal psychosis, losing grip on reality seems common.
And implants, too. NAES.
Neural augmentation enhancement systems. Yeah, implants designed to boost range, processing speed, link them directly into the silhouette's network, but also risks overload, loss of self, even a kill switch. Control is key.
They even tried messing with aging. Project Chronos.
Seems so. Trying to keep the most effective oracles functional for longer. Using genetic therapy, telomere stimulation. Weird science. But it had psychological fallout too. Regression, identity loss, a constant fear of decay. It's all about maximizing the asset, no matter the human cost.
Okay, moving from the oracles,
Yeah.
What about the Orphanage Acquisition Program? OAP, that sounds fundamentally different.
Yeah,
More predatory.
it absolutely was. The goal was blunt. Acquire orphans with latent supernatural gifts, vulnerable kids easier to mold.
How did they even find them?
Informants focusing on places with vulnerable kids, monitoring for weird events, looking for those bloodline markers again, sometimes just identifying kids showing extreme emotional volatility, which can sometimes correlate with unstable powers.
And then extraction.
Yeah, sometimes subtle placement into silhouette-friendly homes or facilities, other times more forceful extraction, forged papers, making kids disappear, maybe even moving them internationally, erasing their past.
Horrifying. Once they had them, what happened?
They got categorized again. The promising were destined for training. Indoctrination, identity erasure, combat skills mixed with honing their specific powers, psychological reprogramming, conditioning, maybe implants like the oracles, turned into agents, specialists.
And the other group, the expendable.
No, those kids were used for experiments. Forced evolution, dangerous genetic tinkering, artificial psychic enhancement, often through trauma or the Delphi VATs, even occult grafting, binding spirits, things like that. Basically lab rats.
Just disposable. Did anyone ever get out?
The sources mention a few notable survivors or rogue assets. Yeah, figures like Lazaro Vega, Orphan 13, hints that some escaped that system, likely deeply scarred and dangerous.
Which leads into things like Project Ghostskin. What was that about?
Ghostskin was trying to artificially create necromancers, basically. Force a psychic link between a child and the spirit world.
Oh, that sounds incredibly dangerous.
It involved things like psychic induction, sometimes near-death experiences, neurological implants called resonance nodes, occult rituals, grafting spiritual energy or entities onto them, then training them to weaponize spirits.
Did it work?
Not well. The sources detail the abilities, spectral communion, resistance to possession, but the side effects were brutal. Schizophrenia, identity erosion, spiritual rot, unstable bonds with dangerous entities.
So it failed.
Officially, yeah. High death rate, rogue spirits causing breaches. it was shut down. But there are rumors it continued secretly, maybe on a smaller scale. Some successful, controllable ghostkin might have been folded into specialized units.
And then there were the Hollow children. Cloning.
Yeah, Project Hollow was about cloning naturally gifted psychics and then trying to enhance them further. Accelerated aging, mental reprogramming, field testing.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It absolutely was. The clones showed erratic brainwaves, became incredibly violent, dissociated. Some started speaking unknown languages, developing weird new powers like mimicking thoughts or parasitic telepathy.
What happened to them?
Total collapse. The clones had psychotic breaks, turned on their handlers in a coordinated way, apparently. They were extremely difficult to terminate.
So where are they now?
Supposedly sealed away in deep containment facilities, places codenamed Facility Theta 9, Black Site Cinder, the Deep Well. But again, rumors persist. Escapes, maybe still being studied or used in some secret way. Another failure that likely taught the silhouette valuable, if horrifying, lessons.
Okay, so you have all these programs, G.A.T.E, Oracles, OAP, Ghostkin, Hollow Children, all feeding potential assets into the organization. What kinds of roles, what divisions do these people end up in?
Well, based on the acquisition methods and the types of abilities they look for, you can kind of map it out.
Like recruits from G.A.T.E or the promising from OAP, maybe with combat skills and subtler powers.
Exactly. They'd likely end up in covert operations or espionage units. Field agents who can blend in but have a hidden edge.
And the Oracles themselves.
They form the core of psychic intelligence and surveillance. Remote viewing, precognition, threat assessment, counter-psychic measures. That's their domain.
What about the ones used for experiments? The expendable OAP kids? The failed Ghostkin or Hello Children subjects?
They probably end up, if they survive in any functional state, within research and development, either as test subjects themselves or maybe the basis for scientists studying these phenomena. There'd also have to be a containment and control division.
For managing the dangerous ones.
Right. The unstable experiments, rogue psychics they capture, maybe the contained hollow children someone has to keep the lid on.
And specialized units.
Definitely. Any surviving stable ghostkin would form a necromantic unit. Maybe other units focused on specific rare abilities discovered through these programs. It's a structure built around harnessing specific types of power.
Which brings us back to the justification.
Yeah.
How does an organization rationalize all of this? The kidnapping, the experiments, the control. It seems monstrous.
The sources don't give us, like, an ethical handbook from the silhouette, but we can infer their mindset. The most likely justification is necessary evil.
For what? National security.
Probably framed that way, yes. Global protection. They likely see supernatural abilities, uncontrolled, as a massive threat. The Oracles finding threats fits this perfectly. They position themselves as the necessary, if harsh, countermeasure.
So they're the thin, dark line protecting humanity, whether humanity knows or cares.
That's likely the narrative they tell themselves, yes. Also, a twisted sort of greater good argument. Harnessing this power, even brutally, serves some larger purpose only they understand. Utilitarianism taken to an extreme.
And simple survival, protecting the organization itself.
That too. The secrecy, the extreme measures, it's about maintaining their own power and existence in a world that doesn't know they exist or the things they deal with. They might even argue these gifts are inherently dangerous if left untrained.
Implying they provide a needed structure, however cruel.
Exactly. And with the OAP, well, the cynical view is pure exploitation of the vulnerable. The justification might be that these kids had no one anyway, so using them for a higher purpose is somehow acceptable. It's a cold calculus.
A chillingly pragmatic view. Individuals as tools, potential as a resource to be mined, consequences be damned.
That seems to be the operating principle.
So, wrapping this up, the silhouette uses this multi-pronged approach from benign education programs to outright abduction and experimentation to acquire individuals with supernatural gifts. These recruits fill various roles, from psychic spies and covert agents to R&D subjects and contain threats. And they justify it all as a necessary, unpleasant burden they carry for the greater good, or at least for their own survival.
That captures the essence of it based on these sources, a systematic, often brutal pipeline for harnessing the extraordinary.
It leaves you wondering, though, what are the real ethical lines here? When does protecting become controlling? Can ends like security ever justify means like Project Hollow or the OAP?
And does the fact that their methods keep evolving from G.A.T.E to data mining to cloning suggest they're getting better at this or maybe more desperate?
Definitely food for thought. It forces you to consider how far organizations might go when they believe they're dealing with forces beyond normal understanding and when they operate completely without oversight. The silhouette remains in the shadows, a stark reminder that power, especially hidden power, often comes at a terrible price.